Hello learners, we begin today's session with the last session and the concluding part of the Nationalism in India lecture. Let us first see the learning outcomes. 1. The student should be able to analyze the contribution of different sections of society in Gandhiji's call for civil disobedience. 2. They should be able to identify different icons and symbols that created sense of collective belonging. Let us first do a quick recap of the previous session. We learned about the Salt March, the repressive policies that were followed after the signing of the Gandhi-Irvin Pact. We also saw the classes which participated in the civil disobedience movement, namely the business class and the peasants and the industrial workers. Let us now see the role of women in civil disobedience movement. Women participated in large numbers in civil disobedience movement during Gandhi's Salt March. Thousands of women came out of their homes to listen to him. They participated in protest marches, manufactured salt and picketed foreign cloth and liquor shops. Many went to jail. In urban areas, these women were from high caste families, and in rural areas they came from rich peasant households. They got moved by Gandhiji's call and began to see service to the nation as a sacred duty of women. Yet this increased public role did not necessarily mean any radical change in the way the position of women was visualized. Gandhiji was convinced that it was the duty of the woman to look after home and hearth, be good mothers and good wives. For a long time, the Congress was reluctant to allow women to hold any position of authority within the organization. It was keen on their symbolic presence. Let us do an activity on this. The teacher could initiate a warming up session through discussion. Students have already been familiarized with the Salt March in the previous week. Teacher may ask students to reflect on the following questions and write down their views. Identify some issues or reasons in current times when people have gathered to protest. The teacher could ask, would you protest if a commodity that is dear to people is taken away or made unavailable, and why? Asked to identify some other famous marches or protests that have taken place and the reasons thereof. They could also be asked to list some of the other socio-political issues for which peaceful protests may work. After students have written down their views, teachers may initiate a discussion on the answers. Another activity could be retracing Gandhiji's Dandi March through a map. Teacher may ask students to refer to the following resources: Dandi March, Salt Satyagraha mapping of Dandi March on School Bhuvan NCERT Geo portal. The Salt March to Dandi, the link has been given. Students may thereafter be asked to locate the route of the Dandi March and identify significant places associated with the march on a map. The next activity could be poster on participation of women in civil disobedience movement in different parts of India. An important feature of the civil disobedience movement was the large-scale participation of thousands of women who came out of their homes in large numbers. They participated in protest marches, manufactured salt, and we also saw that they picketed foreign cloth and liquor shops, and many went to jail also. So students may prepare a poster highlighting the participation of women in different parts of India. The student may highlight protest marches, manufacture of salt, picketing of foreign cloth and liquor shops by women, and many of whom also who went to jail. Visuals, illustrations, oral sources, maps, etc. may be used. Students may seek help from parents and grandparents in this activity. Let us talk about another activity. locating the spread of the civil disobedience movement on a map. Different social groups that participated in the civil disobedience movement, such as rich peasant communities, poor peasants, business houses, industrial working class, women, etc. Students may identify on a map significant places associated with the civil disobedience movement. A lot of this has been discussed in the previous session. This activity will enable students to assess the spread of the movement. Let us look at another activity, question and answer session. Students may be given some time to read 3.2 and 3.3 on pages 41 to 45. Teachers may then ask students to write down answers to the following questions. Why did some of the rich peasant communities become enthusiastic supporters of the civil disobedience movement? How did Swaraj appeal to different social groups? How did the business class relate to the movement? Why did the concept of Swaraj not appeal to the oppressed classes? Did the civil disobedience movement succeed at a pan-India level? Explain with reasons. Another activity could be reading and discussion on participation of different social groups. If you recall, we had suggested this kind of an activity for the non-cooperation movement also. In this, the students may be asked to read the section 3.2 on how participants saw the movement. After reading, the teacher may initiate a discussion on the following. Which were the prominent social groups that participated in the civil disobedience movement? What were their aspirations? And why did they join the movement? Why did the industrial class not participate in large numbers? How did prominent industrialists contribute to the movement? What was the role of women in the civil disobedience movement? Now let us see the Muslim political organizations' response towards the civil disobedience movement. Some of the Muslim political organizations in India gave a lukewarm response to civil disobedience movement. After the decline of non-cooperation Khilafat movement, a large section of Muslims felt alienated from the Congress. From the mid-1920s, the Congress came to be more visibly associated openly with Hindu religious nationalist groups like the Hindu Mahasabha. As the relations between Hindus and Muslims worsened, each community organized processions with military fervor, provoking Hindu-Muslim communal clashes and riots in various cities. Each riot deepened the distance between the two communities. There was an atmosphere of suspicion and distrust between communities. Alienated from the Congress, large sections of Muslims could not respond to the call for a united struggle, as the Muslim leaders thought that their culture and identity would be submerged under the domination of a Hindu majority. This led to the development of alienation of Hindus and Muslims on communal lines. The Congress and the Muslim League made efforts to renegotiate an alliance, and in 1927 it appeared that such a unity would be forged. The important differences were over the question of representation in the future assemblies that were to be elected. Muhammad Ali Jinnah, one of the leaders of the Muslim League, was willing to give up the demand for separate electorates if Muslims were assured of reserved seats in the Central Assembly and representation in proportion to population in Muslim-dominated provinces, which were mainly Bengal and Punjab. Negotiations over questions of representation continued, but all hope of resolving the issues at the All Parties Conference in 1928 disappeared when M.R. Jayakar, of Hindu Mahasabha strongly opposed efforts at a compromise. There was an atmosphere of suspicion and distrust between communities now. And you find that the large sections of Muslims now could not respond to a call for a united struggle. The Muslim leaders thought that their culture and identity would be submerged and a policy of majoritarianism would be followed. Another problem was with the so-called depressed classes. Gandhiji considered himself as a leader of the depressed classes, but B.R. Ambedkar clashed with Gandhiji at the second round table conference, where he demanded separate electorates for Dalits. This was a major blow to Gandhiji because he considered himself to be a propagator of the Dalits. The British government conceded Ambedkar's demand. Gandhiji began fast unto death because he believed that separate electorates for Dalits would slow down the process of their integration into society. Dr. B.R. Ambedkar accepted Gandhiji's position, and the result was the Pune Pact of September 1932. This pact gave depressed classes, later to be known as the scheduled castes, reserved seats in provincial and central legislative councils. But an important difference was that they were to be voted in by the general electorate. The Dalit movement continued to be apprehensive of the Congress-led national movement. Now let us see the analysis of the civil disobedience movement. It succeeded in launching Gandhiji in the international arena. It was this event that first brought Gandhiji to worldwide attention. The march was widely covered by the European and American press. Next was the participation of women. It was the first nationalist activity in which women participated in large numbers. It was social activist Kamala Devi Chattopadhyay who had persuaded Gandhiji not to restrict protests to men alone. It was also the Salt March which forced the British to realize that their Raj would not last forever and that they would have to give some power to the Indians. Let us see an activity. Preparing a comparative chart on the non-cooperation movement and the civil disobedience movement. I have already spoken about a comparison between the two. This activity will help students to highlight significant events and help them to draw parallels between the two movements. Students may be asked to create two columns, vertical, on a chart paper. One column for the non-cooperation movement and the other for the civil disobedience movement. Each column may highlight significant developments and pattern of protest, participation of different sections of society including women, methods adopted, names of leaders, effects of protest, spread of the movement, and did the movement have the desired effect. At the bottom of the chart, students may include a short comparative analysis of the spread of both the movements in different parts of the country and how people responded to the call for Swaraj, which meant different things to different people. Now let us see how nationalism spread in India. We have seen the political part where the movements were conducted by Gandhiji. But we have to understand that nationalism spreads when people begin to believe that they are all part of the same nation, when they discover some unity that binds them together. When the people of different communities, regions, or language groups develop a sense of collective belonging because of experience of united struggles. A variety of cultural processes like history and fiction, folklore and songs, popular prints and symbols all played a part in making of nationalism. The identity of a nation is most often symbolized in a figure or image. If you recall, both France and also at the time of unification of Germany, there was a female allegory to it. Through this image, people can identify the nation. It was in 20th century, with the growth of nationalism, that the identity of India became visually associated with the image of Bharat Mata. This was first created by Bankim Chandra Chatterjee. Ideas of nationalism also developed through a movement to revive Indian folklore. 19th century, Indian nationalists began recording folklore sung by bards, and they toured villages to gather folk songs and legends. This was done to bring about a feeling of pride about our culture, because when the British came to India, they told us that we are backward, that the British had come to India on a civilizing mission. The nationalists refuted this theory by talking about and going back to the past, by collecting these songs which were sung and our beautiful culture. Now let us see an activity. Collecting songs of struggle in local language that was sung during the colonial period or during the national movement. Using oral traditions can be an effective method for students to understand a significant event development within a historical time period. It will also help students to realize how lyrics and poetry can play an important role in awakening sentiments and consciousness. Students may be asked to inquire from parents, grandparents, or other elders about songs of protest, struggle that were sung during the freedom struggle in the local language. Students may also consult other reliable resources. Students may choose one or two songs, and after understanding the meaning with help from their elders, may prepare a write-up keeping the following in mind. 1. Meaning of the song. 2. Who is singing the song and when was it sung? Was it sung during a particular date or an event? Next, what is the context of the song? Does it articulate struggle and oppression? Another could be, does the song convey a message of protest, and what is the protest about? After preparation of write-up, teacher may discuss with students the basic essence of the songs, the context of the song, and common thread that links these songs. Icons and symbols gained a lot of importance in unifying people and inspiring in them a feeling of nationalism. During the Swadeshi movement in Bengal, a tricolored flag with red, green and yellow color was designed with 8 lotuses representing 8 provinces of British India and a crescent moon representing Hindus and Muslims. The flag designed by Gandhiji with a spinning wheel became a symbol of defiance. Another means of creating a feeling of nationalism was through reinterpretation of history. By the 19th century, many Indians felt that to instill a sense of pride in the nation, Indian history and their past achievements needed to be reread. They wrote about glorious developments in ancient times, when art and architecture, science and math, law and philosophy, religion and culture, craft and trade flourished. This glorious past, they said, declined when India was colonized. But these efforts to unify people were not without problems. As when the past was glorified, all the images were taken from Hindu iconography. the people of other communities felt left out. Figures and images of Bharat Mata instilled the feelings of nationalism in the Indian people. The identity of the nation, we saw, is most often symbolized with a figure. And I already spoke to you about the France and Germany, how there was a female allegory. So in the 20th century, when nationalism began, the identity of the nation came to be visualized with the image of Bharat Mata. The image was first created by Bankim Chandra Chattopadhyay in the 1870s when he wrote Vande Mataram, a hymn to the motherland. Later, it was included in his novel Anand Mat and widely sung during the Swadeshi movement in Bengal. Moved by the Swadeshi movement, Abhindranath Tagore painted his famous image of Bharat Mata. In this painting, Bharat Mata is portrayed as an ascetic figure. She is calm, composed, divine and spiritual. In subsequent years, the image of Bharat Mata acquired many different forms as it circulated in popular prints and was painted by different artists. Devotion to this mother figure came to be seen as evidence of one's nationalism symbolized in a figure or image. This helped create an image by which people can identify with their nation. Now let us see some of the activities pertaining to the chapter. Preparation of timeline is a very important activity. It also aids better understanding. So students may be asked to identify significant dates or events of the non-cooperation movement and civil disobedience movement and place them on a timeline. Let us look at another activity, finding a popular song of their respective regions. Students may be asked to reproduce a popular folk song of their region. It could be any song, not necessarily connected with the national movement like the other activity which I had mentioned. Now let us look at another activity, visual representation of identifying symbols of nationalism. We saw as the national movement spread, there emerged a large number of icons and symbols which helped in unifying people and inspiring them with a feeling of nationalism. Even today, there are a number of symbols in the form of images, sculptures, songs, flags, etc. that unite people and instill a sense of collective belonging. Students may identify such symbols and make a visual representation in the form of a poster. The poster may also contain symbols that are used today that unify people and instill sense of nationalism. With this, I end the topic nationalism in India. I hope you have understood and will be able to do all the activities which are mentioned in it. Thank you.